Hello everyone, my name is Josh Argueta. I am the music teacher at Stewart Elementary School in Miami, Florida.
My name is Víctor Manuel Rubio Carrillo. I'm a doctoral student at the University of Miami.
Our research poster today is entitled Music Technology Curriculum Inquiry Uses the National Standards and Learning Domains. In our research, we worked through a university-school partnership in order to conduct collaborative active research to study and develop a music technology curriculum. In our curriculum, we were using NAFI music technology standards along with cognitive, affective, and psychomotor objectives in order to design and assess the instruction that we were facilitating to the students.
One of our main findings was that music technology standards from the creating section target mainly cognitive abilities, that is over like skill movement or affective abilities even. In terms of that, we saw that our affective objectives were the hardest to implement and they require significant amount of time if they were to be targeted. And that connecting standards are the ones that align the most closely with affective objectives.
In our research, we had 132 students participating, divided into 8 groups amongst fourth and fifth grade. And in the curriculum, we had 10 sections that were being designed cyclically. As far as data collection instruments, we were using rating scales for each session to see how well the students were making the marks on the different standards and objectives we were placing during each session, and along with field notes and pedagogical reflections after each session to see what went well, what didn't go so well, and what were some of the things that could be improved on for the session after. And when we were doing our data analysis, we used qualitative coding and diagramming for each session, along with descriptive and non-parametric statistics.
From our analysis, you can see in the first graph, we have a time series of the 10 sessions with a summary measure for each session on the blue for the objectives and on the red for the standards. The first thing you can see here is that they are somewhat closely aligned, which reflects on one of our positive correlation, although fairly low. And that might be explained because there's a couple of places where we see discrepancies, for example, session 2 and session 7, where in some of these cases we had to implement alternate teaching procedures. So our objectives weren't being met, but we were still targeting standards, at least in the way that we were measuring them. You also see somewhat of an upward trend, but you see also a lot of fluctuation, which can speak of the nature of music technology instruction or just how our process went. And on the second graph, you can see the objectives broken down by cognitive in blue, psychomotor in green, and affective in red. The cognitive objectives you can see are very consistent throughout the process, and that relates to the music technology creating standards that we saw have a positive correlation with the cognitive objectives. And the psychomotor objective, we see the higher boost towards the end, where students had more autonomy in their process and they were engaged more in their projects, in singing, in operating gear. And the affective objectives, we see a downward trend. And this can be explained because we were using them as add-on objectives rather than a score objective. So that's why we concluded that they require a significant amount of time to be implemented. We saw a very similar trend on the connecting standards, which has a correlation of 0.8 with the affective objectives that we use. So that's why we think that in order to implement more effective objectives, we need to target more connecting standards in our instruction.
We looked at the mean achievement results for our standards and our objectives, and we found some interesting things. For our cognitive and psychomotor, they were definitely the higher of our achievements, while our effective was the lowest out of all of them. And then when we look at music tech rating standards and our general music performance standards, we see the same trend where those are in around the 70%, and then we have a Connect 11, which is the lowest out of all of them. And we think that this also reflects on the chart and goes back to the correlations that we've been talking about.
Yeah, and it relates to the input. By input of objectives, we mean from the pool of objectives we had. For example, 63% of them were cognitive, and only 15% of them were psychomotor. So some of the higher achievement in psychomotor might also be explained because we were doing less psychomotor objectives. So it was a little bit easier to rate higher on that. And now from the correlations, one that called our attention, although very low, is the only negative correlation between the affective objective we had and the music technology creating standards. So this leads us to think that there's the music technology creating standards are not targeting affective development. So that's something that further research would need to consider.
Thank you everyone for coming to our session today. Our emails are posted here below. Thank you for watching again, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.